Oh my word, it's finally here on World of Tanks console. It's the CALIBAN, and today's review is going to cover everything you need to know about the CALIBAN. We're going to be playing some live gameplay. It could end up terrible, it could end up really well. It'll be my first few games in it. I'll give you a full review, what you should be using on it, and we'll get straight into the equipment since many of you asked what you want to see on this tank. And effectively what I'm going to be running is gun stabilizer, advanced optics, traction system to improve the speed, because although this tank has very good power to weight, its actual map speed is only 33, so boosting it up by an extra 3 kilometers an hour is pretty nice. Alternatively, you could use ventilation, if you really wanted to, or any of the others really. Not too big of a problem, but yeah, the extra speed will help it out. And of course, coated optics to improve the visibility, putting camo on to reduce my concealment by 5%, and of course using full premium consumables because I have 98 million silver and it's not going to make a difference, especially with the operation going on right now. I'm going to catch you in the first game. Now then, first game, Muravanka, and we're actually top tier within this replay. There's another CALIBAN on our team. I don't know whether about the enemy team, there is none. So it's looking like we're going to be able to be one of the only within this replay. Thank you very much, STRV. But nonetheless, what we'll be doing in this replay is using primarily HESH to see what we can do with the round. Of course, this HESH having 1700 alpha if you can dish out both of the shells of damage. You've got a 3.5 second intricate reload, which can come down if you've got some of the perks, only slightly though, but nothing too major. So you've got a long delay between the shells. One thing that you want to note about this vehicle is that it has an inordinately long first shell reload, so you've got about 45 seconds to fully reload the first shell, which is not particularly very fun. So if you don't need to fire the second shell, I really wouldn't, because it affects your DPM massively. In fact, it literally halves your DPM if you decide to fire the second shell, because it takes 45 seconds, and I think the actual reload of the second shell, once you've loaded one, is only something like, I believe in the region of about what is it, something like 20 seconds. So yeah, we do shut down the M56 only because we can definitely take him out, so that's pretty nice. And now we've got the arduous task of reloading fully. One thing that you'll probably want to be taking on this vehicle, potentially, if it's even possible, is the kind of advanced kind of loader or something like that, where effectively you can swap between the rounds. I don't think it works on auto reloaders, so you're probably not going to be able to do that, but it would be interesting if you could. Now, it's probably not the case, so it might be an irrelevant comment, but yeah, you should definitely think about potentially using that. Now, we could have gone after this rover, but he's been absolutely farmed, so there's no point. But yeah, we've managed to do 820 damage so far, which is pretty okay. You're not breaking any records with that sort of result, but yeah, finally we are reloaded with the second shell and we can start to move in. Now, what you'll note about the CALIBAN is that this typically will do much better if you do push in, if you kind of play somewhat aggressively, but not like ridiculously aggressively. You want to make sure that you aren't getting spotted, and that you are remaining somewhat undetected. Now, we're not going to go for the second shell because we're kind of lagging, and of course I don't want to ruin the game by just purely firing off that shell, and we're going to have to wait a ton of time, so we'll wait just a second. I really want to get this SU because we can definitely pen him. We've got 118mm of penetration with the standard rounds on this vehicle, so more than enough to go through. We're going to pre-aim where the SU is going to be popping up potentially. Unfortunately, he's probably out spotting us at this point, so we're not going to poke it all too much. Maybe we'll go after this BIS, but yeah, hopefully we can get a shell off into the SU, which we don't, and this is the problem with loading the HESH rounds. Now, had I been using the AP rounds, which are of course premium, and you actually have to pay for the good rounds in this vehicle, and not like it's World of Tanks or anything, but yeah, what you're able to do is be very, very mindful that sometimes loading the kind of good round is not always the best bet. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing with using premiums like this is, yeah, loading premium rounds is sometimes necessary, and they cost 4,500 each, so they are fairly expensive to be able to be doing all of the time, so you've got to kind of weigh that up yourself. What we might be able to do here is go after the kind of SU, which we don't manage to hit, and this is the other problem about the Caliban, and that's because the accuracy of the Caliban is genuinely terrible. You've got something like a 0.45 accuracy, so it's super inaccurate, especially if you don't run vertical stabilizers, which is almost a must on this tank. If you're not running vertical stabilizers, you're probably doing something wrong, and that's kind of what I always find with the Caliban. Now, I've played this tank a lot on PC. Now, yes, I know that this is not a pure carryover, and you can't just say, oh, well, if it's good on PC, it's going to be good on console, because we all know about a lot of premium tanks that got released on console comparatively, and they're not anywhere near as good as they were on PC. Object 279, I am looking at you. In this replay though, it's been a fairly mediocre game. Had we been loading AP, we would have done infinitely better, and I highly recommend, if you do have the credits, if you're not worried about that, or even if you are playing it currently, because of the silver operations that you can take advantage of, you're probably still going to be able to make money, and that's something that probably a lot of people undervalue, and you probably shouldn't. So what we'll do here is I'm trying to pen this Tiger, which is very difficult, and especially given the lead time that this thing has, it's absolutely terrible. We're going to actually wait to reload this one. Now, we could go after the Tiger, but the Borsig's probably going to deal with him, and we want to make sure that we are kind of fully reloaded to deal with at least some people that might be coming our way, and he's still there anyway. So what can we do from here? Well, we need to be careful from behind, but we also need to deal with this IS-3. It's very difficult to kind of reliably go through an IS-3, especially with this sort of cannon. 250 damage, and even if you are just playing it as an easy kind of poker deal, 250 damage, it can still be pretty effective because you don't have to aim whatsoever. Like, genuinely, you don't have to aim at all, which is always a pretty nice thing. Now, that Barask is being a nuisance, we need to get him out the game, but one thing that we definitely need to do is just try and deal some damage to this IS-3 if we can, and that's something we'll definitely try and do. We just have to wait for him to make the mistake of either coming forward a bit too much or relocating backwards a bit too much, so hopefully he'll come round. Obviously, as I said earlier, we don't have to aim in this vehicle, so as long as we hit him, which we might be able to do there, we will be able to pen him, or at least deal damage and probably finish him off. Now, that was probably the wrong call, because now they've come from behind, and that's absolutely lovely. We're going to pull back down this ridgeline because we can. Got 6 seconds, and it's definitely worth taking the 6 second to fully reload, and then we can kind of deal with people as and when we think we need to. You can see that the ISU is sat back there, so we're just going to fully aim this one, and then we'll put that hopefully into the lower plate. And there you go, our first penetration in the Caliban for 935 damage, which, if you take into consideration even the TDs at tier 8, they cannot do anywhere near that. Well, they can do 750 damage, but they definitely can't be doing that all of the time, and that's something I've always liked about this. Now we do go for the wrong fire there, and yeah, now we've got to wait another 16 seconds, so 2.9 thousand damage roughly is pretty decent. One thing that you want to be doing with your reload is, of course, using enhanced combat rations. So if you're in a clutch situation and you really need to kind of finish off the tanks left in the game, then you want to use your combat rations in those scenarios. You can see here that the P43 is moving forward. One thing that you'll probably want to know is, what is the shell delay like? And I knew that that was definitely not going to hit. I don't really know why I decided to fire it, but nonetheless, yeah, a little bit of a problem. But there you go, a first gameplay using the Hesh. Maybe we should try a full game using the AP, so it gives you a little bit of an idea as to how you can play this vehicle. Obviously, we missed quite a few shells. Obviously, we missed or didn't do damage on quite a few shells, and that Borsig completely outshone me there, managing to do 5,000 damage. So congratulations to Hubi MKS, who did a really, really good job, and his platoon mate as well. in the AMX CDA 105. So yeah, really good game. We were using ×2 silver boost, and with the operation enabling us to earn 330,000 silver as well. So you can do that as well at the minute. That doesn't just apply to the Caliban, that is available for you guys to take advantage of in any tank on World War II. So it's a really good time to grind out some silver on World War II if you prefer that. Now then, second gameplay, we are on Himmelsdorf and we're getting the new tank matchmaking, of course, being able to get a top tier again. This is not the usual thing, but nonetheless, even if we were at bottom tier with 290mm of penetration on the premium rounds, able to do 600 damage per shot as opposed to the 180mm of penetration on the standard rounds that are Hesh, of course, so they always do damage, but yeah, they are much better to use the premium rounds in those top tier gameplays, and it's almost a must if you actually want to do well, especially in those games. The other thing that you'll probably want to know about this vehicle is, does the armor model work in this? Well, you'll be pleasantly surprised that the turret armor of the Caliban is actually not bad whatsoever comparatively to a lot of other medium and heavy tanks that you think may have a turret, but actually they just don't. This one actually has a little bit of a unique kind of turret front, and so you can bounce quite a few rounds. It's well angled. Yes, you will get penned by high tier vehicles, but you know, that's literally 99% of vehicles in the game. But if you are the same tier, you'll actually be pleasantly surprised to know that this vehicle is actually pretty decent at dealing with them. Now, one thing that we are going to do in this replay is go after the Pershing. We're going to take a bit more of an aggressive standpoint. You can do when you're using the APCR rounds on this vehicle. Now, we've got an Emil 1, which is the auto-loading tier 8 Swedish tank that we don't want to be getting clipped by, so we're going to be a little bit careful as to what we're doing. The Ariete Progetto is there. We're going to take a nice round into him, and then we're going to go for the second round, and we do and take away what, like 80% of his hit points, if not more, which is really, really nice. So easy damage at the beginning. As I said, it's not always best to fire all of your rounds at the same time, but sometimes it is, dependent on whether you think you're going to be able to get another shot off in the time. And remember, usually you're not fully aimed when you're actually about to fire, so you have to kind of count that in. Is it going to mean that you may miss by kind of saving your shot and trying to go somewhere else and trying to find somewhere else to go? So what we're going to do here is go round, and we're going to put a nice round into the hammer. That was an easy penetration, so you'll see it's super easy to actually pen everything literally when you're playing this tank, and so it's super easy to get damage, albeit, you know, if you've got some team support, because this tank is terrible if it's on its own. I can tell you that from experience on PC, and that's because you have such a long reload. You know, if you have to fire both shells, if people YOLO you thinking, you know what, I can take the 1700 hit points worth of damage, and then you're just a sitting duck for 45 seconds, it's not fun, and I can tell you that for free. Now, we are going to try and wait for the next reload. I don't know why the team aren't just pushing these guys. They're probably not going to be able to do anything, but what we're going to do at this point is just now move towards, since we are going to be reloaded in about 5 seconds, so when we get to the 5-second mark, we can come around the corner, and yeah, we'll be able to deal some damage. We'll go for the Emil, and then we can finish off potentially the Tiger, or go for the Emil trying to run away. We do miss, which is actually really annoying. I should have saved that shell. Nonetheless, there is an Emil left on the enemy team, and it's been a steamroll in the second gameplay. Maybe we'll play a third in terms of trying to finish off. We try and get a little bit of damage on the Emil from just dancing on him, but yeah, no more damage for us, I don't believe, within this replay. But yeah, you can see obviously my internet coming into effect as usual within World of Tanks. But yeah, really fairly decent gameplay, super quick, and it's a typical 14-0, you know, probably like a 3-minute game or something ridiculous. We'll see how much silver we made though, and you can kind of decide as to whether you're going to make a decent chunk of silver. So in a 3-minute and 41-second game, we made 250,000 silver. Can't complain whatsoever. Yeah, not coming anywhere near the top, because the Caliban is typically one of the lower XP tanks in the game, even if you do a high amount of damage, because it has the higher alpha, so people expect you to do more damage, which is why the XP amounts you get, and it makes it more difficult for you to come in the top 3. But yeah, even even if you do the most damage in the game, you probably won't come top unless you manage to take out a lot of enemies, or if you significantly do a lot more damage. So the third game, still lucky matchmaking in terms of coming in the top, or at least top tier. One thing that I do want to ask is, of course, if you are looking to get some free tanks, I've got a giveaway running at the moment, so you just have to take a look at the giveaway video that I did yesterday as of the recording and publishing of this video. You can have a look at that one. But yeah, I highly recommend you do that. All you have to do is subscribe, like and comment on that video, and yeah, you are in with a chance of winning some premium tanks, XP boosters, a load of extra stuff, all worth a decent chunk of gold if you were to buy it. And yeah, so hopefully you guys have a look at that. But yeah, let me know as well if you've actually purchased the CALIBAN, what you think of this vehicle, because it's difficult to gauge within, you know, the first probably 10 games to know whether this thing is really, really brilliant, whether it's terrible, whether it's kind of average. And I guess since I've played a lot of games on PC, and it seems very similar to the tank that is on PC, that it's going to play much like that. So I wouldn't be so surprised if this thing is not particularly super OP, and it's not particularly that bad either. So it's just one of those things that you kind of know that it's going to be a fun one. It's almost like playing a KV2 in terms of like that's the sort of fun that you'll be having with the tank, but sometimes it can be super frustrating when the accuracy just goes completely against you, and trust me, the accuracy definitely goes completely against you. And then if you factor in that sometimes there is also the idea that you may miss, or maybe because the lead time of this vehicle, which is absolutely terrible, it can be really annoying. So yeah, you do have to kind of think about that at the same time. Now in this replay, I've only managed to do one damaging shell, which was actually a pretty lucky one onto the light tank at the beginning. So yeah, hitting light tanks on the move is not the CALIBAN's forte. It's more of a brawler tank, which is probably why they've designated it as a heavy as opposed to giving it more of like a medium / tank destroyer role, because it isn't accurate and it genuinely just does best when it's up in the front lines. You can see, of course, the probably more OP version in the game, the Skoda T56, which is definitely a better tank than this one. Unfortunately, gun actually hit there, which is super annoying. I think from this point it's probably worth actually running away, because you know there's no one really over here, there's no one to support us if they do actually push forward. So we're going to keep a little bit of distance, and now we've been spotted, which is not good whatsoever, and it could end up with curtains. There you go, typical typical game. When you try and run away, you always get punished on World of Tanks, whether that's the console version or not. We may get hit from over there, which I'm expecting at this point. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. There's someone over in the castle area that just fired at us, but luckily they missed, so maybe we'll be able to get away with it pretty luckily. So yeah, not a bad escape, although we did lose a ton of hit points, so not particularly the most amazing either. We go for the lucky shot on the HMH AMX. Not surprised that that one didn't hit, but there we go. You can always try these things. Right, so what do we have to do in this scenario where you're kind of at the back and when you're having to be in a more sniper position, because the CALIBAN is not a sniper. You guys can probably tell that already. So yeah, you have to see how it plays in all different conditions, and this is definitely a more novel condition for the CALIBAN in terms of how you will want to be playing it. You definitely don't want to be playing it like this sniper role. So what we're going to do now is just set up in a bit of a defensive position, one where we can pull back straight away when the enemies get spotted, who are going to be progressing from or towards our cap, towards us. Now you can see the TNH actually gets spotted here, and because we've got the HE rounds, it's definitely going to be painful to be able to kind of hit these tanks at the ranges that we're looking at, because yeah, as I said before, shell delay is awful, or shell velocity is awful, which means the delay between when you fire and when it actually hits is terrible. So what we could do here is actually go for a bit of a big brain mechanic where you can see shells coming in from above, and that's something you can always take advantage of. You can see here we're going to go for the, we almost hit then, which would have been super lucky, but yeah, don't manage to do it. And now someone's obviously over there, so we're going to go for a bit of a blind fire. One thing that I should have actually thought about was that the arc on these rounds means that even if you were firing in the line at which you're wanting to hit, because they're kind of like golf rounds, they'll actually go over the target if you are kind of aiming at a bush or something like that. So you have to be very careful with where you're aiming, because you can end up just missing purely because the tank just doesn't want to let you kind of actually shoot in a straight line because of the arc of the shells. Nonetheless, we are almost reloaded, and this is kind of the boring gameplay. So I really want to showcase in the reviews, not just when, you know, everything's going right and when this tank is good or when it's bad, or maybe when you can do really well in it, but actually what are the average games like? What happens when sometimes you just don't really get the right positions, or maybe you kind of are forced into a scenario where you cannot be aggressive, where you've got 385 hit points left and they're all heavy tanks that probably have way more alpha than you, and of course you have to be careful. So what can we do here? Well, the Caliban did get spotted. That's probably the tank that was over there. Because we've now loaded the AP rounds, we can actually be a hell of a lot more precise, and we can hit these things at range. So if you are forced to actually fire at range, I would highly recommend that you actually decide to load the kind of AP rounds to deal with a lot of these opponents that are at longer ranges. It's almost imperative that you do that, otherwise you are just going to miss every single time. And what you definitely don't want to be doing is just going for YOLO shots. I say that, but I'm really feeling like going for a YOLO shot. Oh god, it's almost one of those. But yeah, we're going to have to do something because this is getting absolutely boring and the game's going to be over. Let's not kill ourselves on that. Luckily we don't, which is nice. I can go for the Caliban now, potentially, who is over there. We're going to have to go for a YOLO shot, and we only track him, which is so typical. Even with the bloom that we had, we still only managed to track, which is super annoying. Nonetheless, yeah, we're just going to now reload for the full amount since we're so close anyway. Caliban will come out again because, you know, typical players will always do that, so that's always something you can do yourself, is make sure that you kind of pre-aim people that usually do the same things over and over again. We'll go for a shot on the Skoda, which we managed to pen, which is nice. Caliban now coming out, and we'll go for a shot on him. Oh, we didn't quite get it. But yeah, these are the problems with playing the Caliban. Is trying to hit other Calibans on the move. It's like a lot of Calibans going on. But yeah, let me know what you actually think about this tank. I feel like I've kind of ranted, or at least we've showcased all of the different conditions, you know, the more Hesh dependent games, what happens. So as always, it's usually the medium style where you use both Hesh and actual AP rounds to kind of win, and unfortunately we've won to cap because apparently the heavy tank didn't want to get out of the cap and go after the one opponent left alive for more XP and actually decent amounts of extra silver as well. But nonetheless, a fairly mediocre game once again in the Caliban, only managing to deal 1,000 damage, so probably one of the worst games you can expect, and in the most amount of time of all of the replays, coming near the bottom. It's very rare, but there we go. You do see it. I do come near the bottom sometimes, but there we go. 121,000 silver as well. Hopefully that's given you a good review of the Caliban. Overall rating, it is not an OP tank. This is not an OP tank. You're not going to be able to do outrageously good, but you are definitely going to be able to be very consistent. And one thing that you will know about the Caliban is that compared to the PC version, you also get the chance at using the single shot, but who buys the Caliban to use the single shot? And for those of you who have stuck around to the end of the video, you can see me open this confidential keycard that we've got from the Season Pass rewards. It's probably going to be terrible. Maybe it's a premium tank. Hopefully. No, of course. Typical. But there we go. A slight good kind of mix of games for the Caliban. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. And of course, don't forget to check out the giveaway in the last video. And yeah, hopefully you did enjoy once again. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.